Welcome to the Purpose for Life podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Roberts, author of It's Deeper Than That, which is now released. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and through me. And I'm also the founder of the Great Reconnection Movement, which I'm so excited for. And today we have an amazing guest here with us. We have Dawn Tyler Lee, and I think we figured out we've known each other, I don't even know how long. And the reason why I'm excited to have Dawn here today is because I've seen and witnessed and experienced her evolve as a leader and take great risks in her life and to keep following her passion and her purpose. And I'm so excited for you to get to hear from Dawn. So thank you, Dawn, for being here today.
Thank you, Suzanne, for the invitation. It's truly an honor.
Thank you. So, Dawn, would you talk about, as you grew in your leadership? I don't know if you started at United Way, but you went from United Way, I think, to being the chief of staff for the mayor. And then from there to founding your own consulting company, Forest Street Consulting. So, would you take us on your journey and your evolution in leadership?
Sure. I'll start from the very beginning, if I may. I am in Columbus, Ohio, currently, but I was actually born on the East Coast. My mom is from New Jersey. My dad is from just outside of Philadelphia. They got married, moved to the state of Delaware, where I was born. And then when I was about three, my dad got a job in Columbus. And so my family relocated here. And so Columbus is where I grew up. I left Columbus to go to Hampton University, which is a historically Black college in Hampton, Virginia. And I was actually talking to someone recently, and I made the connection or had the revelation, however you want to see it, that I think I really found my leadership voice at Hampton. When I look at middle school and high school, I was the student government type, class president, all those kinds of things. But I think it was really on the campus of Hampton University when I found my leadership voice and connected with people who are still my tribe to this day, if you will. Who really thrived on serving others and being of service to others.
Wait, I
Sure,
have a question about that.
sure. Yeah.
What how do you make a distinction between being like head of student council or whatever and finding your leadership voice? What does leadership voice mean to you?
Having in your heart a passion for serving others and creating a path for others to do it as well. So, one thing I
Mm.
think about when I was on Hampton's campus as junior class president, one of the things I wanted to do was see how many community service hours we as a class could contribute to the Hampton Roads community. So, really measuring that impact we were having. So, different kinds of service opportunities, not just on campus, but off campus in the local neighborhood, and then measuring that, doing service together as a group was something that really excited me and encouraged my peers to do the same. So I think not just serving in a leadership role, but finding my voice in terms of expressing the opportunity and the capacity for others to be engaged as well.
I love that. Thank you for that.
So I was a political science major, and most of the people in my major were going on to law school, which, no disrespect to lawyers, but just wasn't a path that I felt like was one I wanted to take, and didn't quite feel ready to go into the world of work. So I said, maybe I'll hide out in graduate school for a couple more years. And so just purely coincidentally went back to Delaware and studied urban affairs and public policy with a specialization in housing and community development at the University of Delaware. So I went back to the East Coast and really loved that program and thought I would work like in planning and city planning. Actually, got a job after graduate school with the planning department at the city of Wilmington, but it just wasn't the right fit for me. It's a little more internal than I really expected it to be. And one of the things I've learned throughout my career is I'm more of an external facing person. So in roles where I can connect with external stakeholders is something I had to learn over time. But that role being more internal wasn't one that was fulfilling to me. I had interviewed with a organization in Columbus, but I turned it down because I wanted to stay on the East Coast. And then when the city of Wilmington role didn't work out the way I had expected, I came back to Columbus and took the job with a statewide housing nonprofit
Okay.
working in the area of housing and community development called COHIO, the Coalition on Homelessness and Housing in Ohio. So one of the lessons there I would offer to your listeners is, things don't always work out the way we think. In my mind, I was going to build my life on the East Coast and have a career in planning, but there were some other plans for me back here in Columbus. So moved back to Columbus in 96.
Can I ask you a question here? What
Of
is it
course.
that's inside of you that lets you pivot?
I don't know that I think about it that way necessarily. I think what happens is I've tried to remain open to opportunities as they've
Okay.
presented themselves, even if it wasn't something that I had um, initially anticipated or thought about, just having an openness to redirecting my path, in this case, back to Columbus. I would not necessarily say it was interesting when you gave my described me in the introduction, risk taker is not necessarily a term that I would use to describe myself. However, when I think of this, biggest risk or latest risk I've taken in becoming a business owner, someone told me recently, it might have been you actually, that I need to stop saying that because starting your business is a risk. I tend to be someone who gravitates towards the safe and the known. And in my coaching and teaching and training, I have this slide that talks about comfort zone versus our fear zone versus our growth zone versus our learning zone. So we typically find ourselves in the comfort zone. And I've really had to push myself to move more into my learning and growth zone. And certainly becoming an entrepreneur has allowed me to do that. So, going back to your question, what's inside of me that causes me to pivot? I think it's just trying to be open and also, it sounds a little cliche, but not wanting to have any regrets. So when I think about when I started my own company, and I know I've moved off track of the path that got me here, but as a John Maxwell certified speaker, trainer, and coach, one of the mantras that John has is jump and your wings will grow. And so that has really stayed with me, knowing that when I take a jump, my wings will grow and there will be learning either way. Another one of his mantras is sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. So it might work out the way you anticipated, but even if it doesn't, there's still learning, there's still growth, there's still the opportunity to pause and reflect and figure out what worked well, and then maybe what you need to change for next time.
Well, it's interesting listen to you because you said, I came back to Columbus, which is kind of, I'm going to call it a pivot or a risk because you didn't know like I think you've been doing it, but didn't know you've been
Mhm.
doing it. And you've been growing
Mm.
wings when you might not have noticed the wings were growing. Because from the outside, I do see you as a risk taker. I see you
Mm.
have passion and vision and you go do things like even the most recent trip you took these women to Mexico, that's like a vision that you have, you take a risk on. So I'm going to encourage you to think about yourself as a risk taker.
I
But
will try to make that shift.
yeah, only because I'm hearing it. I'm
Mhm.
listening to you and it's in your story. Do you want to fill in the gap in between?
Yeah, just very quickly, I
Yeah.
won't belabor it, but came back to Columbus, worked for the statewide nonprofit, really got interested in public policy and advocacy and government relations, and did some of that in that role, and then went on to become a legislative aide at Columbus City Council, and that's where I really got the local government bug, if you will, working for a council member who chaired the Health, Housing, and Human Services Committee. So still got to stay connected to housing, human services, those areas that I really cared about. And from there, went on to Columbus City Schools, which was the school district I graduated from, and worked for one of our former superintendents, and supported the members of the Columbus Board of Education. So still working with elected officials. And then from there, I went on to higher ed and worked in government affairs at the Ohio State University and really helped to connect the university with external partners, be it local government, nonprofits, school districts, really trying to be a bridge or a liaison between what was happening at the university and what was happening in the local community. At Ohio State, I was there for 8 years in about three different roles. Moved on to the Office of Outreach and Engagement, did some of that same work, and then launched a community redevelopment initiative in Columbus's historic Near East Side and helped bring together partners who were all investing in that neighborhood and wanted to do so in a comprehensive manner. So had the opportunity to be the founding executive director of an organization called Partners Achieving Community Transformation. So really taking me back to those community development roots that I started my career in. And then was recruited to United Way to work in the grant making side of the organization. So all of the resources raised through the United Way campaign, my team had the opportunity to determine how those would be invested in our local community for the purposes of reducing poverty. And so as I think about my role at United Way, it was the first time I led a team of that size. I had a department of about 30. And before that, I maybe had one or two folks who I was responsible for. But it really just speaks to the mentorship and the visioning of my former boss and now mentor Janet Jackson, who saw something in me that I didn't see. And so to your listeners, I would offer that, make sure you have people around you who can see things in you that maybe you can't see for yourself. Going back to the jump and your wings will grow, people who give you that little push, who will give you those opportunities that you might not feel quite ready for, but they see in you that you are. And as I think across all the different bosses that I've had, whether it's the council member I worked for, Charlita Tavares, the former superintendent, Jean Harris, my boss at Ohio State, now Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, they all poured into me in such amazing ways that where I am today likely would not have happened the way it did if I didn't have that support. And so I feel sad oftentimes when people say, I've never had a mentor or I don't have a mentor. And mentor can be an overused word, but whatever you want to call it, it's making sure you've got people around you who are always pouring into you. And just another aside, I've shared this with you privately, but want to take the opportunity just to share it publicly on this platform how much you have poured into me, how much you encourage me, and you speak things over my life that really give me pause, like, how in the world does she think I can do that? And so, just the importance of people having that, and for those that may not have it, being that for someone else. Because leadership really comes when you have people saying, you can do it, even if you're like, no way, I can't do it. But knowing that people have that belief in you can make all the difference. So it's a tangent I didn't really mean to go on, but as you think about leadership and growth and development, um, it's all about our experiences and exposure and environment and all those things that make us who we are.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for sharing the trajectory of your story and really starting with finding your leadership voice, because I've been sitting and listening. I've not ever had the opportunity to listen to this whole evolution of your journey. I met you when you were at United Way. So I'm
Uh-huh.
United Way forward, and I didn't know what brought
Got
you
it.
to United Way, but every
Mm,
step along the way, your leadership voice is amplifying in different,
mm,
different venues, different roles. And I love that you found your passion and leadership voice to guide you as you evolved,
mhm,
because that has
mhm,
not ever changed, right? What
mhm,
you feel passionate about, the way you're a community engager, what you want to see is possible. And then
mhm,
also the other thing that I found really fascinating listening to you is how many times you've done something that's not been done.
mm,
And
mhm.
I think risk taker, I'm just going to keep using that word. Like, I mean, how
Mhm,
many times, like, well, then I did this and then I did this. And I'm like,
mhm,
gosh, those are big things, and big
mm.
things to lead and have vision and passion for, and then to also execute and to do it in relationship with community. That's seems a
Yeah.
very, very part of your story. And I'm so grateful I have you here today to listen to all this, because it's so inspiring. I will add, I've shared this before on a podcast. I'm doing strength training right now, and I have um, these personal trainers that look at me today. The guy didn't look at my chart, and he put 250 pounds on my waist belt, lunging up and down. And he told me afterwards, but they look at me and they see you can actually do this. And then once they
Mm,
tell me afterwards, I would have said, no, I can't. But I
right.
think that it is crucial to have people outside of you
Mm,
that can see the capacity and say, anyway, go do it, whether you think you can or not. And let's see.
that's right. That's
Right.
right.
So thank you so much
Absolutely.
for that. So let's talk about if you want to go forward from United Way to, did you go straight to the mayor's office from there?
Yeah, yeah, just
Okay.
two more steps. So
Yeah.
left United Way after receiving a call from now Mayor Ginther. He and I had worked together when I was at Columbus City Schools. He was a school board member at the time, and we had stayed in touch during my time at Ohio State. And when he became mayor, he invited me to come and serve as his deputy chief of staff of external affairs. And
Oh,
so,
such a good role
again,
for you.
not something I would have ever imagined, but seemed like the perfect opportunity. And going from United Way to the city of Columbus was a very significant pay cut. And so I really had to think about it long and hard. And so the other piece of advice I'll offer your listeners who might be thinking about making a transition, obviously, financial stability is important and you want to make the right decision for you and your family. But if you're presented with an opportunity and the dollars and cents maybe don't line up the way you expect or have been used to, but you think you can still make it work, it's worth taking a really good look at it as you weigh the opportunity that it presents. And I say that because had I not gone to the mayor's office, I likely would not have started my own company because in the mayor's office was when I got some additional skills, experiences, some new tools in my toolkit that I continue to use to this day. And were it not for that opportunity, I may not be where I am right now. So, as an example, the mayor tasked me with leading the first national search for a police chief for the city of Columbus. Previously, the city could only promote from within based on how the city's charter was written. And so the charter needed to be changed in order for the mayor to have the ability to explore talent outside of the division. And so in my mind, I'm thinking I was a political science major. I don't know about law enforcement and criminal justice and all those kinds of things. But again, that faith that you can do it spirit that he had as it related to my skills is what allowed me to successfully lead that effort for our community. And again, kind of building something that had never been done before. And then the second thing he gave me the opportunity to do was lead a department. I was still deputy chief of staff. So in that role, I was responsible for the city departments of education, diversity and inclusion, health, neighborhoods, development, and Celebrate One, which is our mayor's infant mortality reduction initiative. So there was a transition in Celebrate One. The director had gone on to another opportunity, and we needed to have someone to sort of fill in for a period of time until we identified a new leader. So in February of 20, he asked me to do that, thinking, it'd be a couple months, and then we all know what happened in 20. And so finding a new leader for that department was put on the back burner as we were combating, this thing that came to be known as COVID. So I served as an interim director of a department for about 9 months while doing my deputy chief role. And one of the offerings I have now in my company is interim leadership. So being able to go in and fill those gaps for organizations that are seeking new leaders. So those two roles, searching for the police chief and serving as interim director, were experiences that I still kind of pull on to now in my company. And so when we were in COVID, because health was one of the departments I was responsible for, Dr. Mashika Roberts, our health commissioner here in Columbus, would often make recommendations to the mayor through me. We would kick him around and figure out what we wanted to elevate to him as she was working to keep our community safe from this pandemic. And for so many people, the days were long. The work was so critically important, literally life or death. Um, but I got to a place where I got burned out between COVID, and then we also had some unrest in our city as the result of the George Floyd killing. And so just managing those two things got me to the place of feeling like I needed to figure out something different. So in December of 20, I talked to the mayor and said that I was going to be moving on. And I gave him a date of April 1st, 2021. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew if I gave him a date, it would be real for me and it would be real for him. So I started, working towards what was going to be next. And that's when I thought about how I wanted to really focus in more on this thing called leadership and how I could support others in finding their leadership voice, if you will. And so I became certified as a John Maxwell speaker, trainer, and coach in March of 21, excuse me. And then April 1st was my last day, and Forest Street Consulting was born out of that. So that kind of takes us to now. That was almost 5 years ago. Forest Street will be five in April.
Wow. Happy
And
anniversary coming
thank
up.
you. I am thinking about how we're going to celebrate that. So stay tuned. It'll probably be some kind of event. We're still figuring that out. But it has been a journey that I never would have expected, but one that has been amazing and just so grateful to be in this space right now where I get to choose with whom I want to work, how I want to work, where I want to work, and doing work that's important to me.
I love that for you, Dawn, so incredibly much.
Thank you.
I know that you offer unique things just because I've had privy to some of the things like how you do onboarding for new leaders in Columbus and especially people of color that are coming in. Instead of you can do onboarding within the organization, but you also do onboarding with the community. So people that are relocated to Columbus, Ohio, can you, because I've never heard of that before I
Yeah.
talk to you about that, but can you talk about what that means to onboard someone into the community?
Sure. So the name that I've given it is civic and social onboarding. So just like you need an onboarding plan at work when you start a new job, I believe as a retention strategy for companies, people need to be onboarded into the community. And it was something that my husband and I often were asked to do for professionals who were moving to Columbus. their employer or, someone that we knew in common would say, "Hey, I'm bringing in this new talent. Would you all mind meeting them and taking them to dinner and introducing them to people?" So for a long time, we used to just do it. And then as I started my company, I thought, this might be a service offering
Mm.
that we can lean into a little bit more. And what I was finding is that people that we would, you know, invite to dinner or host a dinner party or, get to know, we would look up, a couple years later and they wouldn't be here anymore. And so I was thinking, what's missing? Why are people coming but not staying? And what I found was it was that lack of connectivity with the community. So if someone's new to Columbus, Columbus, for those listeners that may not know, is the 15th, might be 14th, it fluctuates between 14th and 15th largest city in the United States, which comes as a surprise to many. Um, it's a big, small town. There's a lot to offer, there's a lot going on, wonderful neighborhoods, great diversity in every sense of the word, but it can be challenging to navigate if you're new to the city. So think about when you start a new job, you're so focused on getting to know your new coworkers, your roles and responsibilities, how to get to and from work, the piece about, where you might want to engage in community service or a place of worship or where to go listen to live music on the weekends, whatever it is you enjoy doing, finding that in the new city often becomes something that's on the back burner because you're so focused on your job. And so I really see it as a retention strategy for companies to bring in this kind of support so that the employee knows that they're not only committed to my success in my role, they're also committed to my success in this larger community. And so what we do is put together a plan for people to help get them connected in the ways that matter to them. And if they're coming with a partner, a spouse, children, in-laws, parents, a lot of folks are relocating now with a parent or with in-laws, making sure the entire family gets connected to what matters to them and not just the person who is relocating for the job. What I found is people who are coming with small children want to make sure their kids are acclimated and transitioning well and they're in activities. And so this support extends to that as well.
I love that. It's all about connectivity and community, no matter what you're talking about, housing.
Yes.
It's great. We're going to have to begin to start to wind down for today. I would love to have
Okay.
you back again. But,
I'd love to.
tell us how people can get a hold of you for coaching, consulting, onboarding, interim leadership, any of those things.
Absolutely. So there are two key ways. The first is my email address, which is dawn@foreststreetconsulting.com. And also through my website, there is a place where people can leave their information if they'd like to connect and further explore coaching services, retreat facilitation, meeting facilitation. I have an annual leadership conference,
So
leadership
good.
boot camp. So if people would like to learn more about that, they can drop their information at my website, and that will get right to me, and we'll set up a time for further conversation. And the website is foreststreetconsulting.com. In a moment of transparency, I will share that as a business owner, I am working on beefing up my social media. So while people may go to LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, we've got a presence there, but the fastest way is probably to email or go to the website. So that's an area that we're working to enhance for 2026. People say, "I sent you a message on LinkedIn." I was like, that might not be the best way to get me. So I'm a work in progress, Suzanne.
Oh, listen, definitely. I blasted onto social media this year in a wild way. I want
Oh,
to say,
I love it. I'm here. I see your videos pop up. I said, look at Suzanne. She's my role model yet again.
ah, Lord help me. Um,
It's work.
I
It's
want to
work.
say Forest is Forrest. So I want to make sure you have
Yes.
that spelling. Don, I always ask my guests before we sign off, what is what do you think the purpose for life means?
Purpose for life is making sure that you have the opportunity to do what it is that makes you happy, whether it's in your career, in your personal life. The older I get, the more aware I am of time and how fast it moves and how finite it is. And so I think about people, like my coaching clients, for example, some that may not really be feeling fulfilled in what they're doing right now, whether it's personally or professionally. And, I just try to encourage them that life is so short. Figure out that thing
Yeah.
that makes you happy. And when people say, what's your purpose? What's your passion? Sometimes it can feel overwhelming if you don't
Yes.
know what it is. Just break it down and say, what makes you happy? When you look at your to-do list, what are the things you do first because you enjoy them? Um, you know, John Maxwell talks about nourishment centers. What are those things that are around you that you can get to quickly that make you feel better? Whether it's music or a walk or a good friend or sunshine or a pet, what are those things that make you happy? And how can you infuse those in your life to bring you more joy? And so when I think about the purpose of life, it's really what makes you happy and how can you bring more of that into your world?
I love that, Dawn. I want to thank you so much for being here. I got so much out of listening to you, and I'm
Oh, thank
excited for
you.
you to listen back and to hear how many risks you've taken over the years. I think you'll be like, oh,
I
I
will listen
did.
with that lens.
Yeah,
Yeah, I will
definitely.
listen with that lens. Yeah.
I would love to have you back because there's more I want to interview you about. So we'll do that in 2026.
I'll
Thank
look
you,
forward to it.
thank you all listeners for being here today. We are always thrilled to have you here with us. I'm Suzanne Roberts, and I'm signing off today for the purpose for life. I was going to say for it's deeper than that. I've got that rolling around in my head for the purpose for life. And yes, I am the author of It's Deeper Than That and the founder of the
Yes.
Reconnection Movement. And let's keep moving together and finding that joy together, finding what makes us happy and nourishing ourselves along the way. Thank you and have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of your day.